In the early hours of November 6, 2012, commuters traveling along 18th Avenue in Quezon City discovered the body of a young woman. She was barefoot and had no purse, wearing only a white top and blue leggings. No form of identification was found. Her eyes were open, locked in an expression of terror. Officers from the nearby police station quickly cordoned off the scene and notified the medical examiner. A preliminary assessment confirmed the death was not accidental. The victim had been shot 5 times in the head. Her body bore extensive signs of violence, including bruising, abrasions, and darkened marks across several areas. Severe injuries concentrated around the pelvic area led investigators to suspect sexual assault. She had no belongings whatsoever, no phone, no keys, and no identification. The only item found in her hand was a McDonald's paper bag from a nearby location, and detectives also collected a discarded receipt from the same restaurant. As officers worked to determine her identity, residents in the area began sharing what they had seen and heard. Several reported hearing gunshots around 5 a.m., while others recalled a dark SUV racing away. One witness stated that the shots appeared to come from inside the vehicle and were aimed at someone already lying on the ground. 2 additional witnesses remembered part of the vehicle's license plate number, a detail that would become critical in the early stages of the case. Crime scene investigators delayed moving the body to preserve as much evidence as possible. Despite this, the scene quickly drew police, onlookers, members of the media, and people recording on their phones, leaving investigators facing a flood of unanswered questions. Who was she? What led her to that location? And who could have carried out such a crime? With no immediate answers, investigators turned their attention to 2 potential leads: the fast food receipt and the eyewitness accounts. The previous night, November 5, 20-year-old Julie Ann left her home in Los Pinos. Feeling directionless, she lived with her family, and her absence did not initially raise concern. Julie was known to stay out late for modeling jobs or time with friends. That night, she told her mother and younger brothers that she would be out late and not to wait for her. She planned to meet up with a close friend, Althea Altoano. Although the two had recently argued, Althea contacted her with what appeared to be a gesture of reconciliation, an invitation to meet a potential modeling client. It appeared to be a legitimate career opportunity, and Julie was keen to repair the friendship. She carefully got ready, selecting a white top and blue leggings and applying makeup. At around 6 p.m., she said goodbye to her family and left to meet Althea at the SM Mall of Asia, a large shopping complex in nearby Paz. The night started harmlessly with the 2 friends watching a movie, talking, and strolling around. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Later, they took a taxi to the World Trade Center, where Althea said the meeting with the supposed client would happen. As they walked along Diosdado Macapagel Boulevard at about 10:30 p.m. near the intersection with Gil Quiet Avenue, a dark SUV suddenly pulled up. 2 men got out, seized Julie, and forced her into the vehicle. The abduction unfolded in just seconds. Alpha, standing beside Julie, made no attempt to stop it. Julie's handbag and shoes were left scattered on the sidewalk as the SUV sped off, leaving chaos behind. Alpha stayed at the scene, clutching Julie's belongings and sobbing, which drew the attention of passing police officers who stopped to assist her. The officers escorted Althea to the nearest precinct where she gave a disjointed account, saying Julie had been taken by people she did not recognize. She claimed the attack was sudden and that she barely noticed the vehicle, recalling only that it was a large black SUV. Alpha also maintained that the assailants made no attempt to abduct her. Around 12:40 a.m., after finishing her statement, Althea texted her boyfriend to come get her. He arrived with his father and they drove her home to Cavite. Althea did not request medical care and did not return to the police station. By the next day, she had stopped responding to calls from investigators. Once Julie was officially reported missing, her family began searching for her. By then, Althea was actively avoiding law enforcement. Her relatives later said she feared for her safety, but detectives identified multiple contradictions in her account. She never disclosed the prearranged meeting with Julie or the supposed professional opportunity. She also omitted the identity of her boyfriend, who owned the vehicle believed to have been used in the abduction. In the early phase of the investigation, Alpha's account offered no clear motive for the attack. Only as new details emerged did investigators begin to piece together what may have actually happened that night. Julian Rodas was born on July 14, 1992 and raised in Los Pinos, a southern suburb of Metro Manila in a modest but close-knit family. She was one of 6 children. Her mother, Luz, provided for the household by cooking and selling homemade food. There was no father present in their lives. His identity and whereabouts were unknown, and he played no role in the family's daily life. Despite ongoing financial struggles, Julie was raised in a loving and supportive environment. From an early age, she showed maturity, focus, and a strong sense of responsibility. Julie chose to pursue hotel and restaurant management at Ariano University, a private institution with clear long-term intentions. However, the cost of tuition was significant, forcing her to pause her studies multiple times so she could help pay for her education. She took on part-time work and modeling. Was not about chasing fame but a practical way to support herself financially. She entered the modeling industry through a personal connection, which led to commercial projects and an appearance on the ABS-CBN network. As her career gained momentum, she took part in photos for prominent men's magazines, including FHM Philippines. Her looks, professionalism, and strong work ethic earned her consistent work. While juggling school and modeling, Julie steadily built a future in a highly competitive industry. Althea Alterano played a major role in Julie's modeling career. 3 years older and originally from Cavite, Althea had also Broken into the industry and by 2012. Achieved a modest level of recognition. She appeared in the September issue of Jam magazine that year where she was featured as a girlfriend of the month. Among her peers, Althea was seen as driven, energetic, and ambitious, though she carefully concealed aspects of her personal life. Althea was a mother of two, a fact she kept private because it conflicted with the image of a young, unattached model. She and Julie had known each other for years, and their friendship appeared close to outsiders. Julie trusted her implicitly. However, as Julie's career began to gain momentum, and her popularity increased, tension grew between them and jealousy started to surface in Althea's behavior. Julie had shifted from being a friend to a perceived rival. Meanwhile, rumors began circulating among other models that Althea was raising two children. She believed Julie had leaked the information and viewed it as a betrayal. This moment became a turning point in their relationship as quiet jealousy slowly escalated into resentment and ultimately conflict. Although the tension was largely unspoken, it loomed over them. Althea's growing fear of losing her status in the industry led her to confide in her boyfriend Jared. At 32, he owned a tattoo shop in Quezon City and had no direct involvement in modeling, but Althea described him as having a known aggressive streak. During one of their arguments, Jared had once pointed a weapon at Althea. She felt threatened, but chose not to end the relationship. It was Jared who suggested intimidating Julie, claiming it would teach her a lesson about who she was dealing with. The plan was to stage a confrontation without letting it escalate too far. And Althea did not object. She had no detailed plan and seemed unaware of how dangerous the situation could become. Yet her actions in the following hours would prove critical. She disclosed Julie's location, guided her to the designated spot, and remained silent as the incident unfolded. None of these actions were spontaneous. Immediately after Julie was taken, she was transported to a residential area in Quezon City called Salam Compound on Llano Street. The area was densely populated and enclosed, primarily inhabited by Muslim families. Julie was taken to a private house being used temporarily as a hideout. Several men connected to Jared were inside, none attempting to conceal their involvement. The entire operation had been carefully planned, with each person assigned a specific role. According to court records, the first to isolate Julie was a man named Efron. He led her into a separate room and shortly after others in the house heard her screaming and pleading for help. One of the men present, Jomar, later testified that he heard her cries but did not intervene. That was when the physical aggression escalated. Witnesses reported that Efron was the initial aggressor and remained alone with her for an extended period. Evidence later showed that Julie was subjected to both physical assault and aggressive harassment. Later that night, a man named Aldous arrived at the house. Someone the other participants described as dangerous and unpredictable. He was not part of the original plan and his presence had not been approved by the others. At that time the house was occupied by Jomar Bob Abdil and several others. Aldous arrived armed with a .45 caliber handgun. He quickly evaluated the situation, ignored any objections and declared his intent to assault Julie before taking care of her. No one present attempted to stop him. His arrival drastically escalated the situation. Unlike the others, Aldous did not treat the event as a scare or staged intimidation. His actions made it clear. He had no intention of letting the young woman leave the house alive. When Jared returned from a brief trip to McDonald's, the others informed him that Aldous and Ephron had already assaulted Julie. She was in shock, barely responsive, and unable to speak clearly. After evaluating the situation, Jared made a decision. Witnesses later testified that he said she needs to be dealt with. As he stepped outside, Aldous approached Julie and told her she was going to be taken home. Trusting him, she expressed gratitude, unaware it was a lie. By then, the group was already planning where to dispose of her body. Realizing the situation had gone far beyond the original plan, JMR left the house. He would later become a key witness in the investigation. The remaining participants carried out the final stages of the plan. Investigators later confirmed that Aldous fired the first shot at Julie and followed by Ephron. The firearm had been brought beforehand, part of a plan that had clearly escalated far beyond the original intentions. While Julian was still being held captive in the house on Llano Street in Quezon City, Jared briefly left to go to a McDonald's on United Nations Avenue in Manila. At 2:03 a.m., he ordered 2 cheeseburger combo meals to go. Upon returning to the house, he gave one of the meals to Julie. And despite her weakened state, she responded softly, saying she would eat the burger later once she got home. According to a witness, the tension in the house worsened when one of the men accidentally called Jared by his real name, Fernando. While inside the vehicle, Julie may have overheard it. And even in her weakened state, there was a risk she could remember it. Jared feared that if she survived and recognized his voice, she could become a serious threat. In the early morning hours, around 5 a.m., Julien's body was placed in a Mitsubishi Montero and driven away from Lanio Street. The vehicle made a brief stop at 12,118th Avenue in Quezon City, where the door was opened and her body was pulled out and left in a roadside ditch. Her identity was confirmed later that same day. Concerned that Julie had not returned home after her evening plans with a friend, her family had already begun searching for her. When news broke that a young woman's body had been found in a ditch that morning, her mother Luce and one of her brothers went to the morgue. The clothing matched what Julie had been wearing when she left home, and final confirmation came from her mother. The victim was indeed her daughter. For the family, it was a devastating revelation. Julie had never gone missing before and always stayed in contact, even when spending the night elsewhere. This time, there had been complete silence. Her family attempted to reach Althea, but she did not respond. At this point, Police began connecting the victim to Althea and Jared. The day after, Julianne's body was discovered. Investigators from the City Criminal Investigation and Detection Unit started examining key evidence. One of their first steps was analyzing the McDonald's receipt found in the victim's hand. Using the timestamp to establish a timeline, police obtained surveillance footage from the McDonald's on United Nations Avenue, which clearly showed a tattooed man of average height placing a takeout order around 2 a.m., his face easily recognizable. Meanwhile, authorities were confirming details about the vehicle seen fleeing the scene. Witnesses had described a black SUV believed to be a Mitsubishi Montero. Two witnesses even recalled part of the license plate. Using this information, investigators traced the vehicle to a woman named Rosalina Quimbo. A background check revealed that her son, Fernando Quiamo Jr., nicknamed Horo, was the primary user of the vehicle. This discovery placed Jared at the center of the investigation. On November 9, officers began surveillance of the Quiamo family home. Although Jared was not seen, the following day around 6:00 p.m., police observed his father, Fernando Quiamo, Sr., leaving the home. He was driving a black Toyota Innova and carrying a change of clothes. The vehicle headed northwest, and officers discreetly followed. About an hour later, it stopped in a remote area of Pampanga province in a village called Upper Elite. Fernando Sr. entered a traditional Filipino hut or bahiyo where the Mitsubishi Monto registered to Jared's mother was parked nearby. Police moved in and entered the property, finding Jared and Althea inside. Neither resisted. No weapons were recovered, but their active status as persons of interest combined with the vehicle match, surveillance footage, and known connection to the victim gave authorities sufficient grounds to take them into custody. A forensic team was called to the scene and the suspects were taken to the station for questioning. Meanwhile, the City unit launched a coordinated operation targeting the Salam compound neighborhood, a predominantly Muslim area where Julian had previously been held. Around midnight on November 11, police entered the residence used as a temporary hideout. Armed individuals were present and gunfire broke out. One suspect, Farhad Osman, nicknamed Bob, was fatally shot while others were apprehended. Jomar Wary and Jalen Peaser Willen were charged with illegal possession of firearms and brought in for further questioning. Initially, all suspects denied involvement in the crime. But as interrogation continued and pressure mounted, their accounts began to change. Jomar admitted being present in the house where Julian had been held and started cooperating with investigators. Jomar explained that he had helped Jared out of loyalty, noting that Jared often provided him and others with alcohol and financial support. He identified other individuals involved, including Efron, Talib, and someone known only as Aldous. According to Jar, Aldous acted independently and was the one who escalated the situation far beyond anyone's expectations. Alpha, interviewed separately, gave her own account. She admitted agreeing to lure Julie to the location, but claimed she had no idea things would escalate so severely, insisting she believed it was only meant to frighten her. Jared, meanwhile, remained silent during questioning and argued that his arrest was invalid, claiming there was no evidence directly tying him to the crime. The investigation ultimately confirmed that 8 individuals were involved in the crime: Jared, Althea, Jomar, Jelen, Aldous, who was later fatally shot, and Abdul. It became evident that the events were not the result of a personal dispute or emotional impulse, but part of a coordinated and premeditated plan that ended in a tragic loss of life. As more details emerged, the case drew extensive media attention, and the investigation intensified following the arrests. Althea Altamirano agreed to speak with detectives, but she immediately took a defensive stance. During questioning, she tried to present herself as someone who had been manipulated and pressured by her boyfriend, claiming that Jared had previously threatened her and that she felt compelled to go along with his plan. Alpha claimed that after the abduction, she went into shock and didn't know how to respond, which she said explained why she initially misled police and concealed the true sequence of events. She maintained that she had no knowledge of where Julie was taken or what had been done to her. However, Jomar provided a very different account that directly contradicted Althea's claims. He gave investigators a detailed explanation of how the plan was organized, who was responsible for each part, and how the operation was executed. According to Jar, it was Althea who told Jared Julie's location, and even devised the cover story to lure her to the meeting. He also stated that she was aware that the SUV and the accomplices were already positioned along McKippagel Avenue waiting for them. In the eyes of investigators, her actions showed that she had knowingly played an active role in the abduction. Shortly after, several suspects were arrested. Aldous and Efron went into hiding. Police were unable to capture them in time, and they were officially declared fugitives with nationwide bulletins issued. Jomar helped authorities create composite sketches, which were distributed to the public. Despite these efforts, both men remained at large, not only in 2012, but 4 years afterward, successfully evading justice. Meanwhile, the case took an unexpected turn involving one of the detainees, Jalen Payer-Willen. In January 2013, he was released on bail, though he faced charges for illegal possession of firearms. Investigators lacked sufficient evidence to directly link him to the fatal assault or any physical aggression. Just a few months after his release on June 15, a violent incident occurred at his home in Quezon City. During a family meal, an unknown assailant entered the property and shot Jalen, who died instantly. Neighbors later claimed that the shooter was known to local authorities, but no arrest was made. Jalen's wife refused to cooperate with police and signed a waiver formally preventing any investigation into the incident. As a result, the perpetrator was never brought to justice. 4. Investigators, Jalen's death meant the loss of a potential witness. Although he had denied involvement in the events leading to Julie's death. His exact role in planning the abduction was never fully clarified. With the family refusing to pursue charges, the case was officially closed. The public reacted swiftly and critically, particularly since the attacker's identity had been confirmed. Existing laws prevented police from taking action without a formal complaint from the victim's family. By the summer of 2013, most of the individuals involved were either in custody or officially wanted. Althea continued to deny any responsibility for the events, insisting she had no connection to Aldous or Efron. Yet, witness testimony, the timeline of events, and verified evidence consistently contradicted her claims. By the time the investigation concluded, authorities had a clear picture of who made key decisions, who participated in the crime, and who remained at large. Nearly 12 years passed from Julie and tragic death to the first sentencing in the case. For much of that time, the investigation remained stalled, and it was not until 2024 that a trial was finally scheduled for the central figures. Fernando Chimbao Jr., known as Jared, and Althea Alterano were the central figures in the trial. The initial court date set for July 12 was postponed 3 times. While the official reasons for the delays were not disclosed, the victim's family felt the repeated rescheduling primarily benefited the accused. The trial finally began in September and lasted several months, examining witness statements, case files, surveillance footage, and text messages between the parties involved. Notably, the firearm used in the fatal incident was never recovered. 2 of the suspected perpetrators, Efron, Talib, and Aldous, remained fugitives. At the conclusion of the trial, the court found Jared guilty of kidnapping, complicity in a violent crime, and involvement in aggressive behavior. Although there was no direct evidence linking him to pulling the trigger, the moment he gave the order to handle Julie after realizing she had recognized him was considered decisive. The court interpreted this as evidence of intent to cause fatal harm. Jared was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22 to 40 years and was ordered to pay restitution to the victim's family of 500,000 Philippine pesos, roughly 8,400. Althea Alterano's verdict differed. Her actions were judged as participation in kidnapping. The court determined there was insufficient evidence to prove she had prior knowledge of the intent to inflict fatal harm or commit aggression. Prosecutors could not provide direct proof that she was present at the crime scene after the abduction or had contact with Aldous and Efron. Consequently, she was found guilty of a single charge: conspiracy to commit kidnapping. By the time the sentence was issued, Althea had already spent over 12 years in detention. The court ruled that her sentence was considered fully served and ordered her immediate release. Additionally, she was fined $100,000. The court did not formally recognize Althea's role in initiating the plan, despite evidence that she had suggested teaching a lesson, arranged the meeting with Jared, and led Julie to the Location where she was abducted. The decision provoked a strong emotional reaction from Julie's family. Her mother, Luce, along with several siblings, attended the sentencing hearing. One of her brothers, Alvin, publicly stated that forgiveness was impossible. The family subsequently filed an appeal with the Supreme Court, seeking a reassessment of Althea's actions. In their view, her role in the events was not secondary but central. She had initiated the conflict involved Jared and acted with a personal motive, driving her decisions. Beyond the legal arguments, the case also raised unresolved ethical questions. Alpha's exact motive was never fully determined. Prosecutors proposed two main theories. The first suggested professional jealousy in the highly competitive modeling industry where the leak of personal information could damage a career, especially in a field heavily reliant on image and reputation. The second theory pointed to personal resentment and a desire for revenge. Julie had clearly achieved greater success, receiving more high-profile shoots and growing in popularity. This shift upset the balance in their relationship. Althea no longer felt in control and based on their message exchanges had come to view Julie more as a rival than a friend. That shift and the perceived loss of status may have been deeply humiliating for her. The most pressing question still lingering over the case is whether Althea could have foreseen the outcome. Legally, the answer was no. Yet the sequence of events suggests otherwise. Alpha was aware of the type of people she was involving. She knew her partner had a history of aggressive behavior, actively set the events in motion, and then allowed control to fall into the hands of individuals willing to use force. The court's refusal to recognize this as a contributing factor left Julie's family feeling betrayed by the justice system. The conclusion of the trial did not mark the end of the story. Two key individuals involved in the crime remain at large, and Julie's family continues to push for a full review of the case. Her mother declared that she would keep fighting for justice, calling Althea's release an insult to her daughter's memory. While the question of guilt has been settled, the pressing issue now is whether that guilt will ever be fully punished. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.